Welcome to Career Stories, celebrating women leaders in STEM. My name is Todd Boyette. I am director of Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center, co-founder of the North Carolina Science Festival, and I welcome you here at the planetarium for this event as part of the North Carolina Science Festival. I'm fortunate because I get to go first, because this program is going to be an impossible act to follow. So good luck, Dr. Roberts. And I say that Todd Roberts is a friend and colleague. This event is a partnership between Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center and the North Carolina School of Science and Math. And as Todd was mentioning earlier, the Planetarium and Science Center is a gem of the state, and I would echo that about the School of Science and Math. Very proud that we have such a school. I'd be remiss if I did not recognize the two people who made this event possible. It's Meg Powell and Christy Schaefer. You'll hear from Christy in a bit, but Meg, thank you for your support and your assistance in making this happen. Christy, thank you for envisioning how this event would come together. This evening's program is dedicated to Dr. Warshall Faison. Dr. Faison was a Moorhead board member, a colleague, and a friend. She was an extremely accomplished scientist, and she was fiercely dedicated to elevating the voices of those that have been historically excluded. We lost her too soon, but I know that she'd be very proud of what we're doing tonight. So please join me in a moment of silence for Warshall Faison. Thank you.
Hello, I am Dr. Crystal Hardin, Director of Program and Inclusion Initiatives here at Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center. It is my honor and my pleasure to be here tonight for such a celebration of amazing women in STEM. Please give Dr. Mack another round of applause. Dr. Mack, thank you for such an inspirational talk and highlighting your journey. We are delighted to have a distinguished panel of guests here with us this evening to share their career stories. These three women are recent inductees to the North Carolina STEM Hall of Fame. Like Dr. Mack, each of these women have had remarkable careers and have followed unique pathways to success. Rather than tell you about our honored guest, we would like to start by showing you a little bit about their journey.
Today's spaceflight will be the very first for NASA's Christina Cook.
We have to answer humanity's call to explore. We have to set ourselves as the leadership and proactively seeking out challenges and learning that when we focus on one thing and we focus on it together, we can achieve anything. I am someone who has loved exploration on the frontier since I was little. I used to be inspired by the night sky, and throughout my career, it's been this balance between engineering for space science missions and doing science in really remote places all over the world. I loved things that made me feel small, things that made me ponder the size of the universe, my place in it, and everything that was out there to explore. And I put that stuff to work making science gadgets for NASA space science missions and working really hard in that career, but also setting goals in hobbies that I had. I learned to rock climb, I learned to sail, finally learning surfing at this point in my life. And so I think working hard on all fronts to be a better person and to contribute the most to the world is really what's important to me. I really don't remember a time when I didn't want to be an astronaut. For me, I learned that if I was going to be an astronaut, it was because my passions turned me into someone that could contribute the most as someone contributing to human spaceflight. So I didn't necessarily live my life according to checkboxes of how you can become an astronaut, but I followed those passions and one year looked at who I had become and the skills I had gathered, and I asked, could I sit across from a table and present myself as someone who could do this well? And I thought, I'm going to give it a shot. You know, there was a moment where it came to me that this was the most exquisite personal and professional moment of my life, a moment of career culmination where everything I had learned personally, professionally, every skill I had been taught, every hero I had emulated, it was all coming together in this moment. And I realized that I wanted my work to tell every single person on earth that they could have that moment too if they worked hard for it. And I wanted every single person on earth to feel that same feeling.
My love of science began primarily in the 8th grade. And that's because I had an amazing science teacher, Mrs. White. She just showed me how interesting science could be. And from there, I never looked back. Instead of taking things like home ec, I took physics and chemistry and biology, and I loved the sciences and where it could go.
Christy's a role model from various facets. One, being a pharmacologist at a young age and then moving to doing a startup company to raising hundreds of millions of dollars in that startup company to taking the company public. And now she's in the venture space. And to have that life cycle of success in science, it's unmatched.
I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to build a really positive corporate culture, just the ability to work with great people and to help them know that they're valued and that employees are your greatest asset.
People looked up to Christy for her knowledge, for her integrity, caring, purpose. Christy possesses the whole package.
I've always been so impressed by her willingness to give back. She, is a successful scientist and entrepreneur, business leader, but she is more interested in thinking about how she can give back to better her community, help others grow in their leadership and success.
I think the most important thing is to feel like you're making an impact every single day, and I do that in my job here at Hatteras. And I'm able to work with scientific teams that in many cases have never built a company. So I'm able to help them accelerate and move things quickly so that we can get answers in clinical studies as fast as possible and then hopefully bring them to an approval process.
I think she's seen around the country as someone who is leading the way for how we're going to translate science into products that will help humanity.
There are so many things to celebrate with this school. The transformation of so many lives of these kids that came and found their place and have gone on to do amazing things. It is a true gem that I want to help make more visible to everyone in our state.
I always kid her about the fact that she can work NCSSM into any conversation with anyone at any time, because she believes in the mission and wants to help make sure that the school is successful and that others have the opportunities that the school provides.
She always makes herself available to students, and I always say it's hard to be what you can't see. I just see her being a super role model. She is for me too. Yeah.
When I first started off, my mentor that I could look up to was my mother. She was a mentor to always focus on what I could do, not what I couldn't do. And so it never occurred to me that I couldn't do it. So when I was accepted in college at 15, I stayed focused, went straight through, got married, had 2 wonderful sons, Ken and Kelsey. I went to graduate school older. So I was 30, but 31 when I left Mississippi, and I took my 2 sons with me, so it was no such thing as failure. So I'm saying that to say that parents can have a really significant impact on your life.
She's part mom, part aunt, part cheerleader, part coach. I've had a chance to speak to some alums over the last couple of years, and one of the things that they would mention was if they had a problem, they would say, have you talked to Dr. B? Here's what's going on in the residence halls. Have you talked to Dr. B? You got into this college. Have you talked to Dr. B?
I have to admit My high school classmates used to call me, I'd get them for that, but they used to refer to me as a little nerdy. So when I came to the school, I fit in perfect with them. The students may not have known it, but I identified very easily with them, which made it even a better environment for me and be able to appreciate what they gave to be here.
She has a gift about her that she can bring calm or serenity to a person in any type of situation. She would always greet an individual student or a person or me with a smile, always wanted to know how I was doing and was concerned about my welfare.
I still today will think, what would Joanne Barber do? And that instills me to be the best person I am today.
She helped to lay the foundation for what the school is today. Our school is a true living, learning environment, and I think she really helped to foster an overall school community that lived that. And so a number of the programs that we have today, including the Student Leadership and Research Program, our Step Up to STEM program, were all started by Dr. Barber and still are going strong today and thriving.
I'm so proud that we are celebrating women in STEM. I've worked my entire career on the idea of increasing females in math and science and STEM-related fields. Sometimes that data does not increase as much as I would like. So the idea of celebrating it, maybe other young females can see that they can too be a female in science and math areas and have their own identity.
What a wonderful, excuse me. What a wonderful display of great accomplishments. Now, everyone, please join me for a more personal conversation with these amazing women as we learn more about their journey from the beginning to the present. Ladies, if you'll join me on stage. For this conversation, I decided that I wanted to focus on 4 areas: success, challenges, community, and inspirations. I'll start each section with questions, beginning with one of these wonderful and amazing ladies. And then if anyone else has comments, please join in. So, Dr. Schaefer, I'm going to start with you, and let's talk about success. How do you define success, and what does it look like for you?
Well, it may not be what you would think. And I mentioned in the video that I know that you're being successful when you have an impact on others. And I think I've been able to do that through mentoring a lot of people and creating environments in the corporate environment where everybody wants to come to work every day. That was before COVID, of course, but and really wanted to work together as a team. And so success is when everybody's working together for the common good. And I get to see that both in the companies we help build at Hatteras, but also in all the nonprofit work that I'm privileged to be able to do here in North Carolina. So I don't know how other ladies on the stage would define success. I'd be very interested.
Anyone else?
I'll jump in. Thank you. That was a wonderful answer. And that would have been exactly what I would have said. And to build on that, I like to think of success as not just your own achievements or even being recognized for those achievements, but in what Dr. Schaefer said, in giving back. And I have someone here in the audience who was my moral compass growing up. It's my mom. And she taught me something, that the best way to give back is when you do something that no one else will ever find out about. And I think that that to me is an ultimate act of success when you give back. No one necessarily knows about it, but you're making the most improvement, giving the most back to the world. And you're doing it just for that inherent benefit. So thanks, Mom.
And you know, a little different twist to it. For success, you think about, if you go personal, the accomplishment of a goal and in your career of what you want to do. But quite often, you don't celebrate the milestones as you reach the goal. And to be successful, you have to learn how to hold the moment and enjoy the moment. Every part that you go through in your life. And as you accomplish, celebrate, and then celebrate with those that have helped you get there. And always remember to say, you appreciate it and thank you. Because I see students that I know in the audience and students listening in from the School of Science and Math, and everyone is successful, but celebrate and be happy.
Okay. One of the things I can tell you about being at Moorhead for 14 years is that spirit of giving back that you just talked about is one of the things that I cherish about coming to work here every day. This is a place that gives back, and it's not about the credit. It's about what we believe in. And it definitely brings joy to my life as well. Continuing success. Dr. Schaefer, I'm coming back to you one last time. What has been your greatest accomplishment, whether you think it's professional or personal?
Well, I think it relates to building teams and helping people grow and expand and believe in themselves. Meg's here, right? Where are you, Meg? There she is. Meg and I met because of the School of Science and Math. She was an alum and was interested in talking to me. And we had a conversation, and I realized that she might want to do something different in her life, but she was maybe hesitant, to say the least. And our conversation resulted in her literally deciding to leave a great organization, GSK, and becoming an entrepreneur. You've done it now at least 3 times, I think, Meg, very successfully. And so I think, again, watching someone that you had an impact on, a simple lunch at Mez in RTP resulted in watching Meg go on this amazing journey. And I've had the opportunity to do that a few times. The other piece is that in building people, they go off. When Inspire was bought by Merck, for example, a whole bunch of people went off and started companies and hired each other, hired the teams that they'd worked with before, and just, it's like a domino effect that can happen. Did I answer your question this time? Will you ask me a third time?
You did. You did. You did. Anyone else want to talk about their greatest accomplishment?
That's hard to beat. I think anytime you affect the direction of someone's life, that you really can't beat that. I've also noticed, and this kind of goes back to what Dr. Barber said, the biggest challenges are the ones that bring you the most fulfillment in the end. And it's often whether you achieve them or not, but especially when you achieve something that you actually didn't think you could in the beginning. And those are the ones that really, like she said, should and can be celebrated. I think back, and the word that stuck out to me was teamwork. My mission was a very individual journey at first in terms of my training and things like that. But in the end, it was just a tremendous act of teamwork and humility in accepting the help from my teams and knowing that it would be really impossible to spend 11 months on the space station without that help and getting through every day. And really the accomplishment of trusting your teams, I would say, is the one that in the end really brings me the most fulfillment and true meaning.
Well, what a segue to our next topic of challenges. And we're actually starting with, I want to say, amazing astronaut, Miss Cook. Is that okay? That's how I.
Everyone up here is amazing, so we could just preface that.
Starting with you, what is the most challenging barrier or obstacle that you've had to face in your career, and how did you overcome it?
That is a great question. Initially, learning the Russian language comes to mind, but I think I can do better than that. I think as people that are, I'll call us all science curious in here, and those that have probably many of you done careers in science or other STEM fields, math, engineering, we probably find ourselves loving everything. And I think one of my biggest challenges looking back over those critical moments in my life that caused me the most worry or consternation was figuring out which of the many things I love to actually pursue, those big crossroads where you can take this path or this path. And that you are at a crossroads, that those two paths are going to lead you in very different directions. And you feel like, how are you supposed to know? There's no textbook that can tell you which path to take. And I think some of my biggest barriers were standing at those crossroads and wondering if I was making the right decisions, and sometimes feeling paralyzed, not sure if there was ever going to be enough information to make that choice, and if I was ever going to believe that I had made the right choice in looking back. And how I overcame it was adopting a mantra to live the life I imagined when I was young, the life I imagined for myself in my mind's eye. And anytime I was at a crossroads, if I really thought back to what is the life I imagined and what are the things I'm passionate about that I truly love, that was what I used to make as my guide. It wasn't always a pragmatic decision. Many family members didn't know why I was leaving a perfectly good engineering job at NASA 2 years in to go live at the South Pole for a year. But it turned out to be the right answer for me. So I think that can be hopefully a model for all those challenges.
Dr. Mack?
Yeah, so I love that idea of just following the thing that's most exciting to you. I think for me the biggest challenge, I grew up as one of these kids who, I did a lot of sports, and I was excited about school, and as a young kid, a lot of things came easier for me than they did for a lot of my friends. I was a natural, I was a good runner, I was good at softball, and I got started in school, and that went really well. And then at some point it started to get hard, right? Things started to get difficult. And I had been used to everybody's telling me I'm good at this, I should do that. And now I'm not good at this, right? And does that mean I shouldn't do that? And so there was this time when it's this is hard. Maybe math is not for me. Maybe science is not for me because I'm struggling, and I see other people just going and doing it, and maybe this is a sign that I should stop. And getting to the point where it's actually that's not what that means. It's okay if it's hard. It's okay if you're struggling. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And there have been so many times when I've gotten to a point where it's this is really hard, and I don't know if this is for me because I'm having so much trouble with it. And I was well, I've gotten this far, I'll just see how it goes. And maybe it'll go terribly badly, but at least I'll have tried, at least I'll have given it a shot. And then I just work through it. And it turns out if you try really hard and work really hard, a lot of things can happen, and you can become better at stuff, and it can become more natural, and you don't have to be, it doesn't have to come easily at first. You don't have to be somebody where, that's that's just clearly that's what you should do because it's easy. Like, it doesn't have to be easy. It doesn't ever have to be easy. Physics and math have never been easy for me. They've always been exciting for me, but they've never been easy. And I think that that's something that has brought me through a lot of challenges, a lot of things that, where I felt like, oh, I should just know how to do this. I should just be good at this. And like, nope, I'm gonna have to start at the beginning. I'm gonna have to try it. I'm gonna be terrible at it. And then maybe it'll work out. And that's taken me really far. And I've really valued the struggles because it's gotten me to a point where I do get to do the stuff that I really love, even though it has not ever been easy.
When you mention the word barrier, mine will take a little different focus because you said you'll never remember a time not wanting to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember a time that I didn't want to be a research scientist. The only thing, I was born in Port Gibson, Mississippi. I graduated from Alcorn State University. I went on, I got a master's degree at Jackson State. But the barrier was at that time to become a research scientist, I needed a PhD. And at that time, none of the universities in Mississippi that had the programs that I wanted, they were all segregated. So that was a barrier. So when you heard on the video that I moved, I applied to Howard University and was accepted there and moved my family. But the barrier, removing the barrier, opened up the world to me, opened up the doors, and I never looked back. The opportunities that came as a result of that actually brought me back here to UNC Department of Medicine for a postdoc in nephrology department. So barriers, you can turn them to be a part of your success in your life.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Cook, one last question to start with. If you could change one thing about your field of expertise, what would it be?
Well, I do love everything that's the technical about what I get to do, and all the science and engineering that I've been able to do, the exploration. And I would say that the one thing I would change is how in this field of STEM, we look at issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the reason I say that is that's a passion of mine. I've been involved in social justice, community service since I was in college and before. And it's always been a challenge to communicate why those barriers still exist and how they really do affect us all, and important things about how we can start to shift the power structure there. And I really think that as a science person and a data person, there are mathematical models that can describe this. There are technical ways that we can actually not only show from data what's going on and how to fix it, but models that we can use to demonstrate it. And I don't see that represented in STEM fields. We talk about a lot of those equity and inclusion issues qualitatively. And I think that we would have a lot more success in STEM fields in fixing some of those problems. I heard we want those numbers to be better, and I agree. If we actually frame them like the way the people in those fields tend to think about the problems they're solving on a day-to-day basis. And so I say that, and I'm actually working on that. I'm lucky that now that I'm back and I have a ground job in some leadership roles at NASA, I actually get to start to work on some of that stuff. So it's exciting, and I hope that through maybe changing how we present the information to scientific and technical audiences, we can start to even further and even more so change the tide and allow people to see why some of these mitigation strategies that we talk about are so important and why they make sense. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
That's awesome. And I have something great to share. And everyone's going to say, I'm planted here by Moorhead because it's about how awesome Moorhead is and what we're doing around diversity and inclusion. But when you talk about the topic and you talk about the model, you know, I love this place so much because of the creativity and the innovation of the people that work at this organization. And we have a model that we believe in, and we stand behind access and equity and access. And we have a model in rural Gates County, North Carolina, that has shown proof of what can happen when you just provide the access, because it's not about interest when you talk about those underrepresented in the STEM fields. The interest is not the issue. The issue is access. And we stand behind that and we work towards that. And those amazing students are coming here tomorrow night at 5:30, getting off a bus, running through that door, and Ramsey's and the UNC cheerleaders are greeting them for their first ever trip to North Carolina, and we're cheering them on. And those kids, when I'm in my retirement home I'm 52 now, at 82, when I'm sitting there, those are going to be the kids going up into space.
That's awesome.
And that's what I'm telling them they're going to do.
Yeah.
So that is definitely, modeling is definitely so important.
Yep.
So thank you for that moment to brag about Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center just one more time. But anyone else about?
Well, I want to build on what you were all just talking about, and I was thinking the same thing in terms of the inclusivity and the diversification. And in fact, there has been in the corporate world data and modeling that have shown that putting women on boards, because most boards have not had traditionally women, actually improve the financial performance of companies. And the data really spoke to people, so that now more of the boards that I'm on include more women and people of color, all types of diversity, which we need. And so I think we have to all do more to gather the data and encourage it, because what you're saying is so right. Of all fields that should love data and modeling, it's STEM.
I just have to continue. This
Okay.
is so good. Because with the data for, let's take women, for example, what you were saying, the US Census would say that, and I've been watching this for 50 years, not that I'm that old, but in 1970, even though females are now about equal to men in the workplace, but in 1970, you had only 8% women going into STEM fields. Now it increased, and in 2019, it is now 28%. It increased, but not that much. And it's even less for engineers and computer workers. And those positions make up 80% of STEM fields. Therefore, what we're saying is we're attracting females away from the higher paying jobs. So I just want to put a plug in to everyone that we all have to support what you just so nicely said, because diversity in the workplace bring about productivity, creativity, innovation, and global preparedness, really for us to be able to compete. Maybe I should say global competitiveness. So everyone, call to action. I've spent a many years talking about women in science.
Well, speaking of a call to action, let's switch to some questions about community. And Dr. Mack, we'll start with you. What aspects of your work in STEM, in the STEM field area, have brought you the most joy?
It's a good question. I think for me, in terms of the sort of day-to-day work, the joy of understanding something you didn't understand before is hard to compare to other things. If you're somebody who's excited by discovery, it's not that it's very rare to as a scientist to discover something that nobody knows, but you often discover things that you didn't know before that point. That happens all the time, and that by itself is extremely exciting. So that's something that I get to experience all the time, especially when I'm teaching and I'm sort of relearning something that I might have known a little bit before, but you have to understand much better when you're teaching. But I also find that the thing that gets me really excited, and something that's been a lot harder to do in the last couple of years, is when you have those conversations with people and you have those sort of brainstorming sessions, or when you're there with a chalkboard and you're hashing out some idea. That's something that I didn't really think about before I got into science. I thought that I would be sort of alone at my own computer, like with a notepad by myself, sort of having eureka moments, and that doesn't happen. But what does happen is going to a conference and getting excited about something and talking to someone and building up some new idea and figuring out this is something we can do, and this is going to be exciting. This is going to be a cool new result, and maybe we can actually do this. Maybe we can figure out something new, and that's an amazing moment. And I feel like I'm definitely smarter when I'm talking to someone else than when I'm not. So like there's something about that interaction that really sparks the mind, and that's something that I really value about my work.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I have to jump in with you bragging about the planetarium. I have to brag about the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. Embarrassed Todd a little bit. Not only is the School of Science and Math an incredible institution, but the idea, it brought me joy to work with such an incredible faculty, staff, students, alums, and administrators. But most of all, the opportunity to implement programs for STEM, where you see students turned on to STEM rather than turned off, and start at early ages and be able to bring them on campus and have the experience that you just talked about. So that gave me joy.
I've had the good fortune of working on a number of projects that resulted in products being approved and helping patients. And the first one was when I was at Burroughs Wellcome. I see Sam Houston is here from Burroughs Wellcome Fund. And it was an interesting time because in those days, pharma didn't really want to generally work on products that were treating a small number of patients. And we had a drug that we knew worked for very rare pulmonary hypertension indication, but there were only a few thousand patients a year with the disease. And many people told us we shouldn't do it because it won't make any money. But Burroughs Wellcome wasn't like that. And that's when I learned the power of discoveries that can lead to saving lives. And you have to do it, right? And so what I've seen through my career now, it's fantastic, is that orphan diseases and ultra orphan diseases are now being embraced totally by the biotech community. And I've had the opportunity to serve on the Chordoma Foundation Board, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation Board, and watching those diseases that literally were death sentences for patients. These patients are largely living much more normal lives. That is incredibly rewarding. But I also want to mention that the work that I've done also in the nonprofit sector, including Moorhead Planetarium, North Carolina School of Science and Math, Chronic Disease Foundations, and others have been incredibly meaningful. My husband and I are involved with Habitat for Humanity, and he also does a lot of nonprofit work. And the one thing I would tell everybody here, for those of you that are not doing a lot of nonprofit type of work, I will just tell you that it gives back 100-fold what you give, giving back. And so the blend of having both sides, for me, having a hybrid strategy of being both in the for-profit and the not-for-profit world, has been incredibly enriching.
I have another question.
Well, I will, if you don't mind, I will just talk a little bit about a unique experience, but I wanted to say I love the theme. It seems to be the same as I find. Joy is something wonderful happening, but true joy is something wonderful happening with meaning behind it. And when I think back to a moment where I was experiencing both of those things together, was watching my very good best friend, Jessica Meir, come out of the hatch of the airlock on her first spacewalk when I was leading us together on a spacewalk, and knowing how happy she was and knowing the teamwork that we had done that week to get to that point. What many people don't know is the first all-female spacewalk was actually unique in many ways. It was not a planned spacewalk. We put it together in the space of a week, what usually happens in the space of 3 years. And we did that by working directly with the ground teams and really just accepting that we were going to do this together. It might not look exactly like a perfectly planned spacewalk, but all that, and then knowing the meaning behind it, what it meant for her as my friend, and what it meant about not one of either of us as individuals, but what it meant about where we were in society, that we were a team that represented everyone, that we had recognized as NASA that if we weren't going for all and by all, it wasn't worth going. And that moment was one of just pure joy and pure meaning to me.
Amazing. Dr. Mack, back to you for another question. When did you realize the importance of giving back to your community and society? And how have you chosen to give it back?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm in an interesting position in my career because my work doesn't lead to saving lives and creating new treatments or any, it's very abstract, very theoretical, right? There is a through line from theoretical physics to something good happens with people in the future. And it's happened, many times: quantum mechanics, general relativity, all these areas of science, even just electricity. All of those things started out theoretical, eventually helped people. But the stuff I'm doing right now, nobody's car is going to go faster because of dark matter. If we understand what dark energy is, it's not going to, it's not going to save anybody's life. It's not going to make food grow better or cure a disease. So in the area that I work in, there are kind of two things that I can, well, three things that I can do, right? So there's just being visible, which I think is helpful as a theoretical physicist and a woman, and in various other ways, like just by saying like, look, I do physics, it's fun, like that can help. And I appreciate that can help because I've been the person in the audience before looking up to somebody doing something cool. And there's the fact that the reason we do theoretical physics, aside from the fact that 50 or 100 years from now it might become useful, the reason that we do it is really just because humans are curious. Humans are curious species. We want to understand stuff. That's just a thing humans like. We like to understand stuff. And so as a society, we've invested in this. And because that investment is made, like, the people have to get that back somehow in the moment. And so, like, it's everybody's right to know what we're figuring out, because the whole point of us figuring it out is because people want to know it. And so I take that responsibility seriously, the responsibility to share with everybody what it is we're doing, what it is we're learning, how we can better know the universe. And then the third thing is that I really do think that by understanding our place in the universe, understanding where we are in the cosmos, it does change our perspective on humanity on Earth. And this is something that, Carl Sagan used to talk about a lot. This idea of, seeing the Earth as this tiny blue dot in space, suspended in this vast dark cosmos can really change your perspective on just living on that dot, and the way he put it was that it could inspire us to deal more kindly with one another. And then that's something that, people who go to space talk about this a lot as well, like the idea that seeing the Earth from above changes how you feel about it. I don't know about your experience, but I've talked to other astronauts who said that changes how they feel. And I think that I can maybe sometimes help to bring that to people who can't themselves go up there, but who can have a different perspective on where we are in the universe and how we fit into that big cosmic story. And so I try and do that. So, I mean, aside from, I try and be a good neighbor, and I try and, I contribute to charities and things like that when I can, but in terms of my work, it's really about trying to help people understand a bit more about the universe and share that excitement and sort of see a different perspective on existence. It seems like a lot, but like a hard thing. But I think that it's something. It's what I try and do.
Representation matters.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyone else about community and giving back? And some of you have already touched on so many things already.
I've always loved teaching. So that's something that I've always come back to with community service. And one of my dreams one day is to start a literacy organization, and specifically in adult literacy. And that comes from when I was actually at NC State as a physics student. I did that as a volunteer. I tutored adults in literacy, and it was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. So that's my favorite way to give back.
Christina, when you mentioned community service, it made me think about the School of Science and Math. Work service and community service is a graduation requirement. So it instills in students from early on to give back for what you've been given.
So important.
Definitely paying it forward is very important.
Yes.
So let's end our conversation talking about inspirations. And we'll start with Dr. Barber. Was there a person in your life, such as an educator, mentor, or relative, who inspired you to pursue your career path in STEM? We know a little bit already about your mother.
My career path in STEM, I guess I would put it in two parts, because you can be inspired to go into the field, but you need inspiration to make it through.
Most definitely.
So I was inspired to go into STEM because I was the youngest of 3 siblings, and all of us went into STEM related fields. Of course, back then they didn't have the acronym for STEM, but I went into the STEM field, but it was a lot to continue on that path. And what kept me inspired were the mentors along the way. And I remember thinking at one stage in my life, I said, thank goodness for family, mentors, and scholarships, internships, and grants, because that's what gets you through. Mentors that you even take into the workplace. I'm sure Dr. Roberts doesn't think that I consider him a mentor, but he inspired me to continue the efforts and work I did with the programs and implementing them. So inspiration, mentors to me, a very important part of being inspired and continuing your field.
Can I build on that?
You can. You can.
What I was thinking is that everybody needs people to support them. In addition to being inspired, everything that you do is hard, particularly in STEM, and you can't do it alone. There are a lot of people that are there backing you up the whole time. And I'll tell you just one quick story. Is when I was in graduate school, we rotated through the labs and we had to determine which lab we wanted to work in to do our thesis work. And I was in one lab that was one of the best labs in the Department of Pharmacology, but it was scary because this particular professor had never had any female graduate students and didn't seem like he wanted any female graduate students. This was the 80s, guys, okay? And there was a postdoc in the lab who said, well, which lab are you leaning toward? And I said, another one. He said, why not this one? You're doing great work here. You have a really cool project. I said, well, I'm a little bit hesitant. I'm not sure. He doesn't seem to really want a female graduate student. And he said, yeah, but do you like the project? Are you excited about it? I said, yeah, I'm really excited about it, but I'm a little scared to be in this lab. And he said, don't be scared. This is really a good place. You'll learn a lot more. Don't choose the easy lab. Choose the one that's more challenging. And he became my husband a few years later.
I bet you're glad you chose the
Good story.
That's great. I'm lucky because some of the people that inspired me are in this room. Some of them are sitting here. Dr. Barber was at Science and Math when I went there and was a great inspiration seeing you in leadership. And my mom, who's here, when you brought out that statistic about the 70s, she was one of those 8%. She studied biology and always made sure that we knew how much she loved her job as a med tech, which was not common then. Thanks, Mom. And Dr. Halpin, who helped me start a human spaceflight seminar at NC Science and Math, NCSSM. But everyone that led by example. It's hard to believe that as far back as when I was little, I still wanted to go into STEM, even though I was also from a small town. But I think those people are the people that made it possible and made me able to see myself in those roles.
Definitely for our young people in the audience and via Zoom, mentoring and having someone to look to is so really, really important, whether you are in a STEM field or something related. I consider myself a science practitioner, science education. My background is in chemistry, and then my advanced degrees are in science education fields. But I've known Dr. Todd Boyette since 1992, I believe. And we are close enough in age where I can consider him my big brother. But throughout our years of almost 30 years in science education, he has been a mentor, and I've been able to watch his path of successes and failures, making mistakes and learning and correcting and implementing that in my life and in my career. So you want that kind of circle surrounding you. To our young people, think about those circles of people that you have around you, that are those examples and help you along the way through your career path. But back to Dr. Barber. What would you like to tell your 18-year-old self?
Well, this will probably be the shortest that I will say tonight. I would say, never doubt and know your value and go for it. Be persistent and courageous.
Wise words. Anyone else?
Believe in yourself.
I would say embrace teamwork. I found myself, I think because I saw myself maybe as pursuing a unique path with not having seen examples of female scientists and female astronauts that much. I was just fiercely independent, and embrace teamwork, embrace your mentors. Don't be afraid to lean on people.
More wisdom, more wisdom. All right. Our last question. And again, Dr. Barber, we're going to close out with you, and everyone join in. Do you have any final words of wisdom for the students that are here in the audience or joining us via Zoom? as we end the evening?
Well, I think it was what I just said earlier. Any found words I would have would be to the students to embrace your love of STEM, enjoy your career, respect mankind, and make a difference in the world.
Ditto.
I also will say ditto. And I'll add something, a little catchphrase that I often say, which is do what scares you. And what I mean by that is do the things that you think are just outside of your reach, the things that intrigue you, the things that you find yourself thinking about and wondering about and envisioning for your life. Because those things you think you can achieve, when you do, bring out about not only like the most fulfillment for yourself, but they're usually the ways you can make the biggest impact on the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has covered everything very well. I think in addition to all of that, I think the only thing I would add is to, really follow your curiosity, and approach everything with curiosity. It's when you think you're certain about something, that's when you stop growing and you stop learning. Always keep asking questions. Always follow something that tweaks that part of your brain where you're like, I want to know how this works a little bit more. I want to figure this out, and don't ever stop doing that.
Wonderful words for us. Wonderful words for us this evening. And I think in closing, to our young people, change agent. Change agent. Always think about change and how you can become a change agent. Don't be afraid of being uncomfortable. In those moments of fear, being uncomfortable, in those moments of uncomfortable comes change. And we all need you to be the next change agents for us. So with that, I want to thank you all so much for being here with us this evening. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Roberts.
Well, let's give them another big round of applause, please. For everyone here in the planetarium, and for those watching at home, I think we've all heard from Dr. Mack's talk and this amazing panel discussion, a fantastic evening. And I wanted to start by also thanking our friends at the Moorhead Planetarium for hosting this event, Dr. Boyette, North Carolina Science Festival, Jonathan Frederick, Crystal, Stephanie Ridley, the whole team here that helped make this possible, and our team at Science and Math as well. Bob Corey, April Horton, Brock Winslow, who helped organize on our team. And I just want to say, and I love the way you closed that, Crystal, with having them give their final thoughts and words of wisdom. So I don't need to recap that, but the thing that really stood out to me in their discussion was the how much they focused on and have lived a life of service to the larger community, but also to individuals that they've been mentors for. I mean, I think I heard before we ever started the show, one of our alumni, Aaron Locklear here, mentioned to Dr. Barbara that Dr. Barbara changed her life. And I know Christy mentioned Meg in terms of, but knowing Christy, she has been one of the most amazing mentors for women leaders in North Carolina. And I know that Dr. Mack, as she mentioned in her last comments about her being a science communicator, it's so important in what she does about not only the science, but who she is and how she communicates it. And then we all know that Christina has been a mentor and an inspiration for a whole generation of young people just recently. And we know that from everybody at Science and Math. So again, I'm just so thrilled we had this opportunity to have these four women together on stage and get to hear
from them this evening. I think we couldn't, I know I can't be, and I'm sure that we in North Carolina can't be more proud to have such amazing women leaders who give back to others in our state the way they do and have. So thank you again for your time, and really what a great evening. So one more round of applause for our panelists.